Krishna, everyone. Jai. Nice to see some friends here. Lavanga, welcome. So, yeah, I started this reading yesterday of Venu Gita. We're on chapter 9, which is called The Saintly Birds of Vraj. And we're going to continue from the second section here. This chapter is all an explanation, or it's expanding on one verse from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 21, verse 14. That verse is this. I'll just read the Sanskrit in the translation. Rayo batamba vihagamunayo vanesmin Krishnekshitam tat uditam kalavenu gitam Aruhyaye drumabhujan ruchira pravalan Shrinvanti mili tadrisho vigatanya vachaha. Translation. O Mother, in this forest all the birds have risen onto the beautiful branches of the trees to see Krishna. With closed eyes, they are simply listening in silence to the sweet vibrations of his flute, and they are not attracted by any other sound. Surely these birds are on the same level as great sages. So you can get this visual of the forest of Vrindavan, the branches of the beautiful trees, and the birds are perching there on the branches, and Krishna's playing his flute somewhere within earshot of the birds. And the birds are just sitting there, with their legs, the claws of their talons wrapped around the branch, and their wings tucked in, and their eyes closed, and they're just silently listening to the sound of Krishna's flute. So, and then Shukadeva Goswami is saying that these birds are like great sages, because the sages, they close their eyes in meditation and they focus with one pointed attention on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's exactly what the birds are doing. So we're going to pick up here on what for me is page 285, second section of this chapter. So I will read. And I'm going to focus on reading, but if any of you want to, if any points come to your mind that you want to, you can interact with each other. I don't intend for these sessions to be interactive, but if you want, feel free to interact with each other on the chat. Okay. All right. There are many explanations of the word amba, which introduces the speaker of the next verse. The word bata in prayo batamba is used in the sense of wonder, known as sambodhana. Under the influence of their intense bhav, one friend addresses another as mother. And both Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Sri Jiva Goswami concur that the gopis use this form of address as a consequence of their bewilderment. So this is the gopis speaking to each other, and they're saying, oh mother. Like sometimes ladies will speak to each other, we'll call each other Mataji. That's kind of like that, I guess. Sri Jiva says, Punar Mugda Uchu. In their continuing bewilderment, the gopis say. Sanatana Goswami gives 4 alternatives to explain this form of greeting. First, he names 3 ecstatic impetuses by which the gopis call each other mother. These are bewilderment due to being overwhelmed by love, known as prema vaivasya, bewilderment of speech due to absorption, known as bhava avishta, and an expression of wonder called vismaya. The 4th meaning is the literal interpretation of the word, which indicates that a younger gopi is speaking with an elder. So when a younger girl is speaking with an older girl, then she might say mother. Srila Prabhupada concurs with this last alternative, identifying the familial relationship, and states, a younger gopi told her mother, my dear mother, the birds who are all looking at Krishna playing on his flute are sitting very attentively on the branches and twigs of different trees. From their features, it appears that they have forgotten everything and are engaged only in hearing Krishna's flute. This proves that they are not ordinary birds. They are great sages and devotees. And just to hear Krishna's flute, they have appeared in Vrindavan forest as birds. So this is it's very sweet to think that it's a little girl who's saying it. It's a younger girl, younger gopi who's saying it. She's saying, oh, just look at those birds. They're just like sages. it becomes very sweet to think that it's small girls saying it. And I lost my train of thought here. I was thinking of saying something. Engaged only in hearing Krishna's flute. Anyways, let's see if it comes back. There are many groups of gopis discussing the topic of the flute. Some speak to each other, while others speak to their elders. According to Sri Rupa Goswami, there are 360 types of gopis based on their nature, marital status, moods, method of loving Krishna, submissiveness, and age. Kalavati has just entered the realm of adolescence known as Baya Sandhi, and gopis headed by Danya are in the prime of pubescence called Navayovana. These gopis have been betrothed to some Vrajavasis, but because their marriage ceremony has not yet been performed, they reside at home with their natural parents. It is these younger gopis who are speaking, addressing their superiors as mother. So he's saying it could be that they're actually speaking to their actual mothers, because some of them are unmarried, they're living at home, and they could be telling their mother about these birds. Oh yeah, what I was going to say is that I was reading, when the gopis see the different animals of Vraj and the way that they respond to things, then because the gopis themselves, their hearts are so full of love for Krishna, and they know how they're affected when they hear Krishna's flute, or when they see Krishna, or when, Krishna glances at them or something. So when they see other, like the deer walking, or the peacocks, or the birds, or the cows, acting in certain ways in Krishna's presence, then they assume that it's all out of love. They assume that, oh, the reason that they're approaching is because they're attracted to Krishna's flute. The reason that they, there are tears in their eyes is because their hearts are melting with ecstatic love for Krishna. Because they're just, we see others as we are ourselves. So generally we think of that like in our condition, as conditioned souls. If we see a fault in other people and another devotee, then that's because we have that fault, right? So in us, it kind of like works in the negative sense that we notice faults in others and we become critical, but that's because that's the way we are. But because the gopis are completely pure, it's a positive sense that they just see everyone else as pure, because they have pure, overwhelming, ecstatic love for Krishna. They see all living entities as being overwhelmed with ecstatic love for Krishna. They just project that on everybody else. So that's the vision of the Mahabhagavat. Mahabhagavat devotee sees everyone as a pure devotee because they're a pure devotee. So if we're seeing faults and things in others, then that means that we're not a pure devotee. When we see everyone and see, oh, everyone is just serving Krishna, everyone is loving Krishna and thinking of Krishna, and everything that's happening is just a anubhav of their ecstasy for Krishna, then we'll know that we're approaching pure devotional service, like the gopis. So there are all different kinds of gopis. We're hearing about that. All right, I'll continue reading. The roofs of the Vrajavasi's houses often serve as vantage points from which Sri Krishna's departure from and entrance into Vraj are readily seen. Although such observers cannot approach him, they shower flowers, sprinkle scented water, and cheer him with words like Jai, Jai. Standing on the rooftop, overcome by the influence of the flute, a young maiden spoke to her mother in a voice full of feeling. Although accompanied by both her young friends and the elder ladies of the house, there was no impropriety in talking amongst each other, for everyone admired Sri Krishna's flute playing and made his darshan a daily ritualistic observance. In this mixed age group, the Vatsalya Prem of the elder women dominated the attachment of the young gopis. Thus, their shared discussion was quite befitting. And this is interesting because usually the gopis, they don't talk about their affection. They can't express their affection for Krishna in front of anyone else except each other, basically. They can't speak about it in front of their elders at all. But it looks like here on the rooftop, because everyone in Vraj loves Krishna, not just the gopis. Everyone in Vraj loves Krishna. And everybody who's in the village becomes sad when it's time for Krishna to go out to the forest. Of course, the cowherd boys are, delighted. They're like exuberant because they're going with him to have all their daily adventures. But everyone else is staying home. So they all run up to the roof of the houses and they're just watching. From the roof, they can get a good view. They can see a long distance and they watch as the procession of cows and cowherd boys is going into the forest, and they just keep watching and watching and watching until they can't see them anymore. And then they just watch the dust cloud behind them, and they just keep watching that until all the dust settles and there's nothing else to see. So apparently during that time when they're standing on the roof watching Krishna and Balaram, the cowherd boys, go into the pasturing grounds, they're talking. Obviously, they're talking, right? Did you see Krishna, or did you see how he interacted with this boy? Did you see how, he was going with his arm around the cow's neck? Or did you see how they were all dancing and playing musical instruments and the cows were dancing too? Or, they're talking like that. And the elder women are talking. But when the elder women speak, they're speaking with a different mood. They're speaking with a parental affection, motherly affection. And because it's home and they're in charge of the home, then the gopis, although their mood of loving Krishna is different, it's romantic love, but they go along with the Vatsalya prem of the elder women, and that way they can talk about Krishna in the mood of the elder women without the elder women suspecting that they have a different mood. So they're very clever that way. All right, I'll continue reading. Dressed in clothing the color of fresh grass, decorated with golden ornaments, and with her hair adorned with small flowers, that young gopi said. And then this is the verse. And I won't say this Sanskrit again, but it's the same Sanskrit that I read before. O mother, in this forest all the birds have risen onto the beautiful branches of the trees to see Krishna. With closed eyes, they are simply listening in silence to the sweet vibrations of his flute, and they are not attracted by any other sound. Surely these birds are on the same level as great sages. I was just thinking that this is how we should be with our japa, with closed eyes, simply listening to the sweet vibration of the holy name of Krishna and not being attracted to any other sound. So it's in that way that the birds are like sages, because they're the way a sage would be focused on chanting the holy names or chanting the Vedic mantras or hearing the Vedic scriptures. These birds are focusing in on Krishna's flute. So when we're chanting our japa tomorrow morning, we can think about these birds and how focused they are, how they're just like really tuned in with their ears to listening. And we can pray to those birds, please bless me with the ability to have one pointed concentration on the sound vibration of Krishna's holy names. Get the mercy of the Vraj birds. Another girl with rosy cheeks, her complexion like cream, exclaimed, "We have described the glories of the cows protected by Sri Krishna, but how can we comprehend the limits of good fortune achieved by the birds residing in the forest?" All the ladies, young and old, turned her way. "Which birds are you referring to, dearest?" inquired the mistress of the house, caressing her daughter's lovely face. You see how they're very affectionate towards each other. She turns and she caresses her face. "Which birds are you talking about, my darling?" Pointing to the great forest of Vrindavan and its many trees, she replied, "Prayo Batamba Vihaga." "Almost all the birds, dear mother, with the exception of the peacocks, cuckoos, and parrots, who are devotees of Sri Krishna and familiar with the devotional arts of dancing and chanting, all the other birds seem like great munis." So it seems like the peacocks are dancing, the cuckoos are singing, right? We heard about that yesterday. And the parrots are having their conversations. We heard yesterday the transcendental argument between the male parrots, the shukas, and the female parrots, the sharis or sharikas, about who's better, Radha or Krishna. So they are chanting, but all the other birds are silent, just listening. One of her friends took her elder's hand, her eyes smiling in a most enchanting way and said in a childish voice, "We have all seen the Prema Nritya of the peacocks, who with their performance have glorified this planet up to Vaikuntha. There is certainly none their equal." Prema Nritya means the love dance of the peacocks. "Then where do you see these birds, pretty girls?" inquired another elder gopi, just arrived on a household visit and bearing a great desire to see Nanda Nandana leaving for the forest. Imagine this elder gopi, she comes over to the house and just to pay a visit, because they would go and visit each other and socialize, talk to each other. But it just happened to be the time when Krishna's going to the forest, so she came to talk to the other gopi, elderly gopi, but like, we'll talk later. Let's go see Krishna, and they go running together to the roof. So now they're up there on the roof. Pointing with excitement towards Vrindavan, Danya said, "Look at the trees whose crooked branches are their innumerable hands. Just to see Sri Krishna and hear the sound of his flute, many birds have climbed high onto those branches, and being very happy, they sit silently, their eyes closed tight. Just listen." So it sounds like the branches are like reaching out to get closer to Krishna. Yeah, I was reading a description about how the trees, when Krishna passes through on the path, the Raj forest, so the trees, the branches extend themselves and they just immediately spontaneously erupt with new twigs and fresh leaves and buds. And then the buds like immediately burst into full bloom and start dripping pollen and honey and all these things. So yeah, it's like a spontaneous just growth and eruption of fruits and flowers to offer to Krishna as he passes through. So and the branches are doing that and the birds are sitting on the branches. Everyone there became attentive to the ensuing silence. Although at a great distance, by the influence of Yoga Maya, the gopis perceived Vrindavan forest as if it were just nearby. The sound of the cows in the village faded away, and the only sound that remained was the rustling of the leaves in the trees. The usual chatter of forest birds was replaced by great stillness, which rolled across the meadows and splashed the rooftops of Nandagaon. Interesting. So the forest is far away, but due to their great desire to witness what's happening in the forest, Yogamaya empowers them to be able to experience the forest as if they're in it, or as if it's very close to them. And so they can hear all this and they can see what's going on there. Said an elderly lady as she strained her eyes, "I do not see any birds on any tree branch. O daughters of cowherds, what invisible thing are you observing with your youthful eyes?" Looks like she was not so favored by Yogamaya as the other girls. Laughing, some girls took the hand of their aunt and pulling her to the edge of the rooftop, excitedly said, "Are, look at the twigs on the branches that are without flowers or fruits and are decorated with soft, tender buds. It is there that the birds sit, their eyes shut in meditation." Squinting to screen out the glare of the late morning sun, a friend of Mother Yashoda, very expert in cooking tasty preparations for Krishna and Balaram, said, "Yes, yes, now I see them. The birds have truly climbed beyond the branches and are sitting motionless on the new sprouts, as if in mystic anticipation. Daughters, what is it that they desire?" Purnamasi, the all-knowing disciple of Narada Muni and the well-wisher of the inhabitants of Vraj, dressed in a snow-white sari, her face radiating with Brahminical goodness, spoke. "Friends, these young girls are right. The colorful birds perched on the twigs are great sages who have come to hear the song of Krishna's flute and see him herd his cows through the forest. Today, perfected jnanis like Sanika and Sanat Kumar have become birds just to gain the darshan of Krishna and Balaram." Wow, so it's not just that these birds are like great sages, but apparently at least some of them actually are great sages who have taken on the form of birds to be able to witness Krishna's Raj Leela in the forests of Vrindavan. Overwhelmed by such august association, their mouths agape, gopis young and old offered their pranams to the birds, and turning towards each other said, "It is true, these birds must be sages. Look, they have climbed out on the hands-like branches of the trees, and moving further onto their beautiful finger-like twigs, they are attentively hearing the song of the flute. So the gopis, they stop and they're thinking, oh, if that's Sanat and Sanaka Kumar, those are great sages, and they're offering their obeisances to the birds. They're offering obeisances to the Kumaras there in their bird form. Purnamasi Devi continued, it is well known that Atmarama sages like the Kumaras and Navayogendras are nirvikar, free of all transformation, for they are unattached to the world of fruitive activity. Having achieved such perfection in the adopted form of birds, they now exhibit bewilderment occasioned by the sweet nectar flowing from Govinda's flute. Delighted at the renown of their beloved Mukunda, who awards liberation to the greatest mystics, the elderly lady said, indeed, this is a wonderful day. In this forest, almost all the birds are sages, devoted to meditation, and being completely freed from passion and ignorance, they have climbed the branches just to see Sri Krishna. One of the young girls quickly added, either they want to see Sri Krishna, either they want to see Sri Krishna, or they want to be seen by Sri Krishna. Another girl, her face sparkling with youth and happiness, said, oh, Amba, are these birds great sages who have assumed such forms for the darshan of Sri Hari? Or has the inestimable power of Vrindavan transformed its birds into great munis? So, have the sages transformed themselves into birds, or have the birds been transformed into sages? Purnamasi replies, Priye, do not doubt the potency of this transcendental realm, or the ability of those sages for whom mystic perfection is a mere consequence of their austerities. There is no doubt these birds have come from both categories. Whatever their origins, from their behavior it is clear that these birds are sages. So she's saying their muni dharma, such as asana, dhyana, darshana, and so on, are clearly seen in their character. Therefore, we should be careful not to slight them in any way. So she's saying that whether they're birds who became sages or sages who became birds, these birds are all sages. So you need to respect them. Speaking with great reverence to both Yogamaya and the birds, Danya said, O Brahmani, please explain the Muni Dharma so expertly exhibited by these great sages now taking the form of birds. Smiling, Purnamasi said, look their way and try to understand my words as I explain the symptoms of Muni Dharma manifest by the behavior of these wonderful birds. All ladies, young and old, turned toward the birds to witness the symptoms of their piety. Purnamasi Devi said, the birds have assumed their asana along the long, broad branches of Braja's trees, who are themselves great mystic yogis. Their dhyan is meditation upon the daily pastimes of the Prince of Vrindavan, who, being pleased with their austerities, grants them his darshan, the third stage of Muni Dharma. In this great revelation of the form of the Lord, the birds become absorbed in Shravana, which is hearing the enchanting song of the flute, for which they have practiced mona, or silence, abandoning all other sounds, then vibrating the words, Krishna, Krishna. Can there be any doubt of the saintliness and high qualification of these birds? So Purnamasi's, she's praising the birds, how they've perfected their dhyan, or meditation, by meditating on the daily pastimes of Krishna. They've perfected their austerities by, the result of their austerities is that they're granted that darshan. And they've perfected their shravana, their hearing, by hearing the sound of the flute. And they've also perfected their monavrata by observing strict silence except for chanting the names Krishna, Krishna, which doesn't break the silence because it's transcendental sound. Amazed at the austere, what time is it? 5 minutes. Amazed at the austere sadhana practiced by those birds and feeling great humility in their presence, the gopis spoke in unison. Having devoted themselves to Muni Dharma, these birds are unquestionably great sages whose good fortune is the vision of Sri Krishna and the song of his flute. Because we are always desirous of such perfection, we too should live like them, and adopting the bodies of birds, take up residence in the branches of Vraja's trees. The gopis want to become birds. They're like, if those sages can become birds, then maybe we can too. And we can hang out there in the tree branches and watch Krishna. Nandimukhi Devi, a Brahmana disciple of Purnamasi, ornamented with great affection for Sri Krishna, said, O cowherd women of Vraj, the glory of these bird sages is not easy to understand, and thus their behavior is difficult to imitate. These birds are not ordinary munis. Their accomplishment in realizing the absolute truth is very exalted, and therefore they are in a very special category of their own. So this is Nandimukhi. Not all of the girls in Vraj are gopis. And gopis means the cowherd girls, they're in the Vaishya category, right? And the Vaishya. But there are also Brahmins there in Vrindavan, and they're Brahmin families. And Nandimukhi is a Brahmani from a Brahmin family, and she's a disciple of Purnamasi, who's also a Brahmani. So, continue. One gopi, whose young daughter stood by her side, mesmerized by the flute's effect on the birds, asked, what are the special qualities, Lakshana Vishesha, of these extraordinary birds, Nandi? You are the beneficiary of the pure teachings of your renowned preceptor, who lives alone in her hut by the bank of the Yamuna. As it is the duty of Brahmanas to enlighten others, help us prosper and progress towards life's ultimate goal by recounting what you have heard of these birds' special qualities. So it's very sweet. You see, the gopis are appealing to the Brahmani girls. You are great learned scholars, and you've received the pure teachings from your renowned preceptor, your Guru Mata, who lives there and alone in her hut on the bank of the Yamuna. So please tell us what you've learned from your glorious teacher about these birds. Nandimukhi bowed to Purnamasi, who blessed her with a smile. Without further ado, she raised her right hand in a Jnana Mudra, Jnana Mudra, and said, look at these birds of many colors. Without doubt, they are great sages who have come to Vrindavan to perfect their existence. They sit on the tree of Vedic knowledge, having achieved nishta, or firm determination, in their sadhana. They have renounced the lower branches, which are the fruitive activities of karma kanda, and have climbed onto the small twigs, where they perform the higher practice of hearing Sri Krishna's flute. Having realized Sri Krishna as the goal of all wisdom, they exhibit the primary characteristic of being Vedavit, or true knowers of the Vedas. So they're referring to Bhagavad Gita verse 15:15, where Krishna says, Vedanta Krit Vedavit Eva Chaham, that by all the Vedas I am to be known, Vedavit. So it's saying that they've gone up the yoga ladder. Like the tree is like a ladder with lower branches, middle branches, higher branches. So the lower branches are karma kanda, the knowledge of karma kanda, and then now they've gone up to hearing Krishna's flute and understanding that the actual goal of all knowledge and the actual, that which is really to be heard and understood, is Krishna. So they've abandoned those lower branches, or abandoned the karma kanda sections of the Vedas, and they've gone to the higher branches where they understand the essence of the Vedas is to know Krishna. So I'll read a little bit more. Purnamasi glowed with pride at the eloquence of her disciple, and smiling encouraged her to speak further. The next qualification of the birds is their Bhagavat Siddhi, or perfection in hearing the ripened fruit of all Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. Unlike those jnanis who are attracted to the Upanishadic branches, these sages have selected the ultimate branch of the Vedas, which is the Bhagavatam. If you inquire how this can be confirmed, I shall reply that taking up residence in Vrindavan and witnessing Sri Krishna's Go Rakshya Lila is possible only for ardent students of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus I conclude that they have achieved Bhagavat Siddhi. I was hearing something recently in a class about, let's see if I can try to remember. It was from Brihat Bhagavatamrita, and Gopakumar had gone to, I'm trying to remember. I think he had gone to Vaikuntha. Yeah, he was on his way up to the spiritual world, and he met the Vaikuntavasis. So Vaikuntavasis, they met him, and they could understand that he was, like his constitutional position is a Goloka, that he should be in Goloka. He's a cowherd boy, Goloka Vrindavan. And so they told him that, what are you doing on the way to Vaikuntha? That's not your place. And then he said, oh, what is my place? And they said, you should be in Goloka. And they said, how do I get there? And he said, well, you need to associate with those who are in a consciousness of Goloka. And he said, well, but if I'm not in Goloka, how am I going to associate with people with consciousness of Goloka? And then they said, you need to go back down to Earth. They said, well, but Earth is a middle planet. I'm already up here. I'm like already on the way to Vaikuntha. Why would I have to go down to Earth? And they said, because there on Earth, you'll have the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll become eligible to go to Goloka Vrindavan. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all knowledge and the highest thing, because it gives it gives a narration of Krishna's Vraja Leela. So can you imagine? You go all the way up to Vaikuntha, and then you're told to come back down to Earth to study Srimad Bhagavatam. And we have the opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam class every day, and we don't even go. So we have to really understand our good fortune. So that's what it's saying, that these birds, these sages, they're highly qualified. And what is their qualification? What is their perfection? It's that they hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. And that it says that taking up residence in Vrindavan and witnessing Sri Krishna's Go Raksha Leela, his Vraj Leela as a cowherd boy, is possible only for ardent students of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, so that's important for us. We have to become ardent students of Srimad Bhagavatam if we want to go to take up residence in Vrindavan and witness Krishna's Vraja Leela. Okay, I think on that note, I'm going to wrap up today's reading, and we'll pick it up tomorrow. So thank you for joining. And Krishna's transcendental flute playing, Ki Jai, the saintly birds of Vraj, Ki Jai.
Jai.
Tell you one thing.
Hari Bol.
We started yesterday, and we heard that conversation about the parrots, the female parrots and the male parrots talking to each other, and we heard descriptions of various birds too. And then this morning, I'm here in Dallas, so I'm in Radhikala Chanji Dham, and this morning Darshan Arti, the curtains opened, and Radhikala Chanji were wearing this outfit that was covered with green parrots. It was a purple outfit, and it had parrots embroidered all over it. And I felt like maybe Radharani's happy that I started doing these readings. There's some little reciprocation there. So let's keep going. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhupada Priya.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhupada
you,
Priya.
Prabhupada Priya. Thank you.